I just want to welcome Maris. Hi, Maris.
Hi, Leslie.
Nice to see you. Thank you. And Jenny, welcome. Marty and Cindy are both from Washington. Hi, Jenny. Where are you located?
Hi, I'm in Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's just a few blocks from me.
Did I miss anyone? Okay,
Okay, we ready to start?
we're ready to start.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Dewey, and I'm the chair of the Detroit branch of WILF. And I apologize for not having my camera on. It is on. I'll occasionally turn it on, but it flickers. Zoom does not like me lately, so you'll see what happens when I test it. So welcome to tonight's Kitchen Table Talk in Action. I hope you're enjoying the beauty of the snow, if not the shoveling, the scraping, the driving on slushing streets, and walking on icy sidewalks. Kitchen Table and Talk is a series of monthly programs on a variety of topics, and today we're going to hear from Sherry Wells about the quote-unquote criminal justice system, followed by a Q&A, and then we'll follow this up with an action. This program is sponsored by Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and for those who are not familiar with our group, WILF is a women's peace organization formed in 1915 during World War I. Our primary focus over the past 107 years has been peace, but for us, peace means not just the absence of war, but a just and equitable society that cares for the planet. So I hope you'll get to know us. Check out our website, I'll put that in the chat, or email us if you have any questions about who we are. We're always looking for new members. And like all peace groups, we need the younger generations to step up. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. I'm really pleased to introduce Sherry Wells because she is one of us. She has been a WILF member for many, many years. And in fact, I think she and I go back around the same time, the mid-90s. And she, as a WILF member, she co-authored a peace camp manual for children. So it's a manual on how to run a peace camp for children. And she co-authored this with Helga Hertz. She is a general practice, or has served as a general practice lawyer. She wrote 5 editions of the book called Michigan Law for Everyone, which was published between 1984 and 2002. Sherry is a member of the Green Party. And as she says, she is done with anti-racist training and has moved on to anti-racist doing. So with that, I'll give you Sherry.
Thank you for the opportunity, because this has just been churning inside me. Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And we've all heard no justice, no peace. And with mass incarceration, no freedom. The bail or jail war on the poor, no freedom. We've all heard a word. Someone will mention a word that we don't think we've heard before, like charcuterie or whatever it is. And all of a sudden you see it everywhere. Well, I hope to do that with some of the list I have of the so-called criminal justice. It's one of the white supremacist systems that, as a lawyer, it's one of the ones I can do. And so this is what I've been working on lately. In my Michigan Law for Everyone book, I had a definition of white-collar crime. Crimes against property, often dealing with huge sums of money, done from within the business setting, like embezzlement, generally not punished as severely as crimes committed by those wearing other color collars. Pink and blue. I saw a billboard, more cops, less crime, Tudor Dixon. My response to that is fewer crimes, fewer criminals. And some of what we're working on in Michigan and what can be done can greatly affect that situation. Having people being arrested, and primarily Black and brown, have the domino effect on their lives. They have a job loss, housing, child custody, and these are because they don't have money to pay bail. And bail has the rules as to when it's supposed to be applied, and those have not been followed. And so going through the list, I tried to make these pretty much in order of what may happen to an individual. And this is a lot of them. Laura has what she can email to everybody. I made a PDF out of it, a single page PDF. And I want people to take a look at these and find something that for some reason strikes them and they want to learn more. So I have website addresses all over the place for you to take a look at what these organizations do, and they would welcome you as much as this group is welcoming you to WILPF. So the issues in the organizations, traffic offenses, and this is that relates to Tudor Dixon's billboard. Police and law enforcement can have the choice or can be required to say, okay, we're going to do an ordinance violation instead of calling these things crimes, misdemeanors or whatever. And they can do things like appearance tickets for people. One of the things that I learned, and I'll mention where I learned some of this because I highly recommended it. Someone can be driving on a suspended license or because they have no insurance. And we have heard how high the insurance is in Detroit. It doesn't mean they're running over anybody. It doesn't mean they're driving drunk. But these are victimless matters, and those are just clogging up the works. And I think these might also be in the bail reform package that is going to be reintroduced. Alternatives to policing. This is that excellent program I saw, and that's the National Lawyers Guild. So I have that link right there. Go to that link. You can watch that video. It is excellent. Once they sent us a link to it, I have been sending it to people I know, especially Black and brown people I know. The statistics that this one lawyer mentions are just astounding. Youth confinement and some of what they've done to young people that just scars them for life, and that's not what we want to have happen. So the MichiganYouthJustice.org has community-based solutions, as well as trying to reduce having them detained. Detention is incarceration with a different word. The big highlight is the bail reform and pretrial. These were bills that were introduced the last Michigan legislative session. And of course, they weren't passed, but they have a better chance of passing. And right now they're being tweaked, and they will be reintroduced. They have not some of the same people are able to reintroduce them because we had the redistricting. And so that has changed things, as we all know. But this is the ACLU is a leader on that. I've been attending their bail reform meetings twice a month lately, and I'm looking forward to all of these things that may be in it. If they aren't in it, you will hear from me because we need these things too. Like I said, there are strict rules for how bail is supposed to be applied. Judges have been ignoring them left and right. I met a young man, a brown man. He obviously looks of Mexican ancestry. He was stopped for failing to use his turn signal. And because he had a DWI 10 years ago, they arrested him in Berkeley. They did not allow him to make phone calls. His wife didn't know where he was for 3 days. So it's a DWB is driving while black or brown. I looked up the phone call thing, and this attorney in North Carolina said, getting a phone call upon arrest is something you see only on television. He did some research and he found one state, there were several states that do require the phone calls. And my county commissioner says that he's been told that the sheriff's department do have let people make phone calls. But this one state said you must let people make a phone call to a family member, an attorney, a bail bondsman, they need bail reform too, and a daycare provider. Isn't that cool? So that's what I want to make sure that Michigan has at least those 4. I know from a personal knowledge of a friend of all of these different court costs that get added long before someone's found guilty. He has probation fees. Well, they're not probation, they're pretrial. I forget what the word is. I was trying to look it up, but he has to show up, report in, pay these fees. If they put someone on a tether, that's like $600 a month. And the studies are showing that whether or not you put someone on this bail bond type stuff, people are showing up in court, making their court appearances with the same statistics. So you don't need all of these tethers and all that stuff for most people. There are alternatives to jail and prison. And a county commissioner I had a few years ago had worked very hard to get alternatives instead of Oakland County building yet another jail or a new jail. So I'm glad that she succeeded with that, her and whoever else she got to go along with her on it. The right to a lawyer. You hear the Miranda Reed warnings. You have a right to a lawyer, and if you don't can't afford one, one will be appointed to you. There are not enough of them for them to be appointed. When I was appointed early in my legal career, I was able to go to the jail and sit at a table with my client and talk to them. What happens most of the time now is the defense attorneys see them 10 minutes before their case is called. That is certainly not enough time. So there are several organizations that are working on the criminal defense attorney to become much more real. And I understand Detroit passed a bill, the city council did, about having an appointed attorney. Now let's see if it gets funded. Mass incarceration is something that there's a book about, the new Jim Crow. I'm reading that one, and it's horrifying. It doesn't matter who the president was. Clinton, Obama, any of those, just as bad as all the rest of them, trying to be tough on crime. So mass incarceration is just something that several of these organizations are working on. But one that's called the Michigan Collaboration to End Mass Incarceration is obviously focusing on that one. We have people, I think, and I wanted to check on this, that are still in prison for marijuana offenses that now in Michigan they wouldn't get arrested for. I heard there were 1,300. Now, some of them might be the federal offense that Whitmer couldn't do anything about. But in my opinion, she should have released those people 30 days after she became our governor. Solitary confinement, that affects about 1,300 people or 1,500 people in the state of Michigan. Solitary confinement is certainly cruel and unusual punishment. When you have 1 hour a day of being able to move around, and I'm not sure they give them enough light to read by if they even let them read books. Good time. We hear about good time, time cut from your sentence for good behavior. Michigan doesn't have it. 6 states don't have it, and Michigan is one of those. So that's something that if that moves you, there's 2 organizations I have on this list that you could join with. Prison gerrymandering. I didn't find the link to that. I still need to net search for that one. But with prison gerrymandering is a census thing, which means it may be a federal thing. When the census counts people in a jurisdiction, say they count how many people in a certain district, like a congressional district, if that district has a whole bunch of prisons in it, and some of these do, that's jobs for farmers who need to make money when the farms aren't doing well. These are rural areas that tend to be conservative. So they put prisons in there and they count the prisoners as being residents in that county, which means all of these people who have been mass incarcerated from Detroit Detroit doesn't get to count those people. And that way they don't get representation. They don't get funding for all of these things that are based on your population. And I'm seeing a couple faces being very, very unhappy to hear this. Keep encouraging me because sometimes, you know, if it's not bad enough, it just flies over our consciousness. So thank you that it's not flying over yours. Thank you very much. Reversing convictions of the innocent. You've heard that now that they can do DNA, they are finding with DNA people that should never have been in prison, much less 40 years. I saw one on PBS about this man who'd been in for 40, beautiful paintings that he has done. And he should have had good time too if that had been available. But my Michigan Bar Association, I'm proud to say, I found out that they're also working on eyewitness identification reform. This is people being eyewitnesses, not all these cameras that Detroit City Council is wasting their money on, but eyewitness identification reform, where somebody may be incarcerated as a result of one person's eyewitness testimony. Some of these people have been shown to have been paid by the police to be witnesses. So we're getting down to pardons and communications, other ways of getting people out. And that is such a strange thing. So there's a video here, American Friends Society, the Quakers. And that will explain a lot of it. It's really interesting what presidents do on this, what governors do on this, who they commute, what the process is. There is an application for commutation in Michigan, but I understand it takes a long time. And there's a difference between a pardon and a commutation. Now, expungements. The Michigan Clean Slate Bill was passed in 2020. And Sherry Gay Danyogo was one of the people who put that through when she was still in the legislature. And she lined up the Black women lawyers to give a training about expungements. And even though I'm only 2 out of 3, I got that training with them too. And then she had an opportunity for the next morning, a Saturday morning, for us to volunteer to consult people who wanted to take advantage of that expungement law. So I was able to consult with 2 women about what they could do, what their chances were, what they needed to do. And I need a lot more practice. I can't get good at something until I've done it several times. So I need to find out. I've got 2 organizations that I can call up. I've been volunteering in other places and no one's called me back, which I think is sacrilege if you don't call back a volunteer. Nation Outside. I learned about that in Traverse City when a group of churches were having a meeting about the upcoming election 2 days later. And right here, Nation Outside are the rights of formerly incarcerated persons. This includes an organization called volunteerreentry.gov, which points out that recidivism, 88.7% of people don't repeat offend. And the First Step Act is something they're working on. This is something we've heard about in the news recently, as Judith is nodding her head. Supreme Court Judge of Michigan, Bernstein, I think is supposed to be the correct pronunciation. I don't know that he exactly apologized, but all of a sudden I see these ads for the Bernstein Law talking about their social justice programs and scholarships and stuff they do, trying to make amends for what their boy did. It was a man who'd been in prison from 2014 for 14, he'd been in 14 years, he's been out 14 years, he got a law degree in that time. A lot of people do things. I asked someone who was giving our Sunday school class a tour of the Wayne County Jail, and she said most of the people are in here because they've got poor judgment, or maybe they don't have anything else to do or anything productive to do. So the nation outside is trying to help people get, it's like you've already served your time. Why are you still being punished? Even Florida, and Michigan does too, lets former prisoners vote. A lot of states don't. And a lot of people I've run into when I was campaigning with another Green Party person, we ran into some people who were houseless and they didn't think they could vote because they'd been in prison. We corrected that misunderstanding. And of course, suggested who they should vote for. But anybody who tells them they can vote is probably going to get their vote. Survivors of Crime, Alliance for Safety and Justice. Crime survivors is an important thing too. And the Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense frequently has survivors on their stage, in their programs to tell people what it feels like, including some of the young people who were in Oxford High School. And so that's another organization that can be helpful. Did you know there's only one women's prison in Michigan? It's in Ypsilanti. If you are a woman sentenced to prison from the Upper Peninsula, you are unlikely to ever see anybody in your family until you get out. Now, at one time, there was, I think maybe the Michigan women lawyers had a group that an opportunity to take people and their children to come see the person in prison. And that may still be going on, but if that's something that suits your fancy, I'm sure we can find out. The American Friends Again, their criminal justice program includes the women's prison there and rights for pregnant, they said pregnant persons, it's pregnant women. I mean, so far as I know, only we women can get pregnant. So they're working on what they can there. I understand that Eastern Michigan University is also doing a program of education for people in that prison. Now, I separated out Michigan Liberation and Criminal Justice on my handout because they have several different issues they're working on. The Michigan Liberation, it includes the Black Mother's Day bailout. So if that's what you'd like to contribute for Mother's Day, they would certainly welcome that. But with any luck at all, we can stop this horrendous bail situation. Michigan League for Public Policy, I've enjoyed attending several of their annual events. There's so much learning that goes on with those. And they have different issues, many different issues, but take a look at those. Now, upcoming events. On February 15th, there's going to be a launch by the ACLU of Michigan of that tweaked bail reform package of bills. And 3 days later, I'm going to be giving this program again, but with someone from the ACLU who can tell us what's in those bills and how to find them and how to study them. And the National Lawyers Guild, they do wonderful things. They have things like know your rights for young people. When you what information you should give to the police and that's it, nothing more. Keep your mouth shut. They have books of rights for protesters, because one of the people that they've recently got released, well, a couple people, one of our Green Party people who got into the oil break in Kalamazoo, if you remember that one, when another one of Enbridge's pipes broke, and he skateboarded into that and he stayed in it to the whole day so that they couldn't do any more damage. He is still suffering health problems as a result of his protest. But the National Lawyers Guild defended him. And I was in at least one or two of those court hearings involving his protest work. And then, so they're having the Student Week against mass incarceration and just the issues, building alternatives to prisons and jails and policing. My understanding of when police were invented was to protect rich people's property. Yeah, Tara's, yeah, you know that. Okay, it's gone beyond that. It's gone into its own little, they call it police culture. Now, what to do? My recommendation is you write your legislators. You may have a new one, you may have someone who's already been in the legislature and got lucky enough that still is yours in your district. So you didn't get cut off from someone you already knew. And tell them that you look forward to their support for this bail reform package that is coming in February. And you will also contact them after it comes out. And if there's anything in those bills that tells you that relates to someone you know, maybe in your family, neighbors, friends, one of your offspring's friends, where they've got caught in one of these things, give them that story so they can use it when they're trying to convince people who need a little convincing on how important it is. Now, some of the talking points. When I ran for local office, someone came up to my daughter who was at the poll and said, "What is your mother's stance?" And she said, "She's liberal on people and conservative on money." And I am. I do not want my taxpayer money paid to house someone in a jail. Oakland County is $61 a day, is, as my county commissioner says, the hotel rate for keeping somebody in there. Michigan prisons are $36,000 per person per year. Our school funding is $10,000 per person. I don't know that I agree that there's a school to prison pipeline. That makes it sound like schools aren't doing what they need to do. No, it's policing. And one of the things, Harvard did a study, and they said, the causes of crime, it's not poverty, it's not education. The main causes of all of the criminal behavior, whatever we have, is the system. It's all systemic racism, systemic enforcement. That's the main cause for all this crime we have. So, Tudor, more cops, less crime? No. Fewer crimes, fewer criminals. And so I want, instead of jail or prison, I want people working and supporting themselves and their families and their community. And I want them paying taxes too. So have that go across the aisle. Someday we need another aisle, but for now, one of the most important things third parties have been able to do over decades has been to raise issues. Good trouble. Questions, answers and questions.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. We're going to have Leslie handle the Q&A. Before we move to that, I just want to mention one thing, which is the reason they use the term trans persons is because trans men can become pregnant. So that's just an explanation for that term.
Oh,
So
okay.
Leslie will handle the Q&A. I'll let her handle it, but if you want to just put your question in the chat, that might be the easiest thing, and she'll read the questions. So, but it's a small group too, and so if you want to raise your hand via the reaction feature or raise your hand physically, that's fine too. If you can't over the phone, the person on the phone won't be able to do that. So, go ahead, Leslie. Leslie, you're on mute.
I said everything works. So do we have any questions? Thank you, Sherry. That's very informative. Lots of information. Lots of important information.
That's why you need the handout. But
Yes,
people, these are most of the issues that people aren't even aware of.
exactly. I know quite a few of them were new for me.
Good.
So would anyone like to expand on any of these issues and ask Sherry any questions?
Or give me some more fuel. That's okay too.
That's great. Yes.
Tara has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Tara.
Wow, Sherry, that handout is really incredible. I would love to basically take that and see if there's a way of localizing it to DC.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe if I do that, it'll be a way that different people, like different people who are in this space can have, you know, a standardized way that we can know all these different issues, because yeah, basically every single one of the, I mean, a lot of the things that you listed, I can think of the organizations that are doing that work in DC or in this area. And there's an interesting, I've been organizing with a group of quote movement lawyers. Are you familiar with this concept, movement lawyering?
I'm probably doing some.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like the new, I actually don't really like the term because
It sounds like a physical.
well, yeah, I mean, it's basically implying that there's the way that you make money doing lawyering, and then there's the way that you know, basically don't reinforce the injustice system in lawyering. And that's what I don't like about it, is that there's like this kind of like binary. Whereas in reality, anyone, like we have the tools, as you've listed in this handout, that all of us should be able to be able to do this kind of lawyering. It shouldn't be so like a separate thing that you know, is distinguished from traditional lawyering. But anyway, point being that there's been a group of us who have been organizing under this banner of movement lawyering from the summer 2020. And basically, what I wanted to say was that I think that there needs to be a better, because a lot of movement lawyering, a lot of this lawyering is happening at the super grassroots level, especially the initiatives that I really like working on are the ones that are led by those who are formerly incarcerated. And so those are going to be really, really grassroots. And I think I see a lot of trends that are necessarily at the national level or at the federal level. And so I think it would be great if there was some way of keeping that, you know, that idea that impact is local, but also having a feeding that goes to a national level, so that we know about the different, because everything you listed in this document, I can imagine that there's I'm working on things that are happening here in DC that are the adjacent to that. And it's really good to know that we have, like, seeing this is really helpful to know that it's not just happening in DC or, you know, in these little pockets. It's actually, it looks like it's happening everywhere. And
One example, timedone.org. They have a little slideshow. It says Michigan clean slate bill passed 2020. Florida, this is what the status of Florida is, and it goes through all these different states. On some of these, I put in the name of the organization and then Michigan. I could get the local one. So all you have to do is put in the name of the organization, Washington, DC. They may have a chapter.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Are you a lawyer?
Yes.
Condolences.
I know, exactly. I say I'm relapsed.
Relapse. Okay. But there are ways of approaching things that we learned, or many of us learned, that are very valuable, and it takes a lot of patience to try to corral some of the people we talk with to be relevant or not. If I learn nothing else in law school, what relevance is what my clients always left on the dining room table when they had an appointment with me. But yeah, it's there are some good things we can do. Now, the movement lawyers are not volunteers, or they get
No, it's well, basically, I mean, everyone kind of has their own reason for why they ended up in this group. But
being able to eat, I think, is certainly an entire, someone should be able to work and eat, do good work and eat too.
yeah, I mean, truthfully, I do not, I mean, I basically, a lot of us were either fired or, you know, in that we were unemployed during the summer of 2020. A lot of the younger people who went out into the streets and stuff, I do have to say that a lot of us were unemployed or had lost our jobs or something like this. So it gave us the free time to like protest and do mutual aid and stuff like this.
But you still need to eat.
I know, exactly. Yeah. So that's another reason why I don't like the movement lawyering, because there is I when I like reach back or talk to professors, law school professors of mine, and tell them about what I'm doing, they kind of are like, yeah, that's not practical. Like,
One of my favorite classes in law school was poverty law.
Mm.
And one of the biggest things it said was sometimes that filing a lawsuit and being in court is not the best method. Publicity might be.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really impressed. This group, it's really spearheaded by an organization called Life After Release that is a organization completely I mean, basically a lot of the people in it are formerly incarcerated.
That's like Nation Outside, Life After Release.
Yes, Life After Release, and they are doing some incredible work in just, I mean, tucking our bodies into various, so we're like pushing for remote access for all courtrooms, virtual access for all courtrooms, because then a big part of what they do is called court support. I don't know if you're familiar with court support, but it's basically like trying to fill the courtroom so that the judge is aware that they have many eyes on them.
We filled the courtroom for the young man who'd been in that pipeline.
Oh, yes, exactly. Court support. It's my favorite. It's actually the main thing that I do with movement lawyers, because you know, it really makes a big difference. Like the judges, they're so much nicer to the defendants or the loved ones. And anyway, so court, and then they have a team of people who watch the courtrooms regularly and keep track on these points that you mentioned about bail bond hearings and pretrial detention, really trying to stop the number of bodies that are getting put into the prisons.
There was an article in the Bar Journal that I read that was 2 ACLU lawyers written 2 years ago, and they said it's time to make these judges follow the rules on bail. Yes.
So they've been pushing for that. They've been pushing for you know, virtual access so that we can get more eyes in the courtrooms. And they also do the national bailout, the Mother's Day bailout. Black mother bailout. And yeah, there's just like, it's really amazing. It's like we have like you know, community days, trying to make sure that people have like clothes for getting jobs and stuff like this. Like it's so much more than filing lawsuits and things like this.
Well, sometimes those wraparound supports are needed too. I don't see any other hands up, but you don't have to ask a question. If you have an answer, like Tara's got all kinds of, I'm making notes.
Comments. Judith, did you have a question? I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm aware but not informed about the possibility of a third party involved in people who are they're not on parole. They have to report every week.
Probation? Parole is about prisons, and probation is supposed to be part of a sentence when you're outside of prison.
Okay, then No, it's not that. I'll think of the name of it and I'll get back with you. It's a violation. People have to go do this. They have to report to their something officer on a regular basis. I don't think this young person had been in jail. But
But they might not even have had a trial, because you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But if you have to report to somebody before you have your trial and pay the fee.
that's
to
the
have
deal.
that.
That's what I wanted to ask about. There was a
Yeah.
fee, there was a court fee, and then somehow there was a third-party fee attached. So
Well, they
this
do
young,
have some of these third parties that are making money.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So this young person was indeed working, but no matter how much she paid, every time it took all of her wages. So pretty soon she went into debt because she had to pay the court and she had to pay this third party. I'd never heard anything like it, and I still don't understand it.
Okay, I will, I'm sure I have your email address from that scheduling meeting we had. And I will send you the one for the ACLU contact and tell her I have another story for another talking point, another story for you to, because I think
Okay.
I mentioned that in one of those bail reform meetings too. And so the more stories they have of people they know. Someone I know of that had to, and I hadn't heard of this before. He kept losing his cell phone, so he couldn't call. I think he needs to put it in a bag around his neck. But he kept, wasn't able to even call in, because some of these he could call in to check in, but he hadn't had a trial yet. Leslie.
Hi, I have a question, but Laura had her hand up first. So Laura, go first, please.
Oh, okay, it didn't matter. That's okay. As far as order, I understand that the Detroit City Council did pass an ordinance that requires them to provide free legal representation, but this is specifically for people who are facing eviction from their homes. It's not the general population, it's for home evictions.
It's
But
getting to be the general population.
it is? No, is that what the ordinance, I thought the ordinance said it's for the people facing in these eviction courts, because
Okay, it could be.
has it been funded? Do you know anything about it? Because I understand the problem now is funding, but do you know if there's been any move to fund it?
I have it on my list to contact my favorite Detroit City Council person, even though I don't live in Detroit. I've been at some of her coffees. She had one at a beauty shop, one at a park. And there are times where if someone said something needs to be done, at the next meeting, I hear that she got it done in 2 days, that she's been on the ground literally. She picks up litter too. If there's an area that needs some cleanup, she gets together with the community and they clean the alley. Angela Calloway. If she keeps going like that, I'll support her for mayor.
Nice. There's another question on the floor, Sherry. It's from Diane, and she comments, so there should be no bail or prisons?
Well, I'll tell you a good example of bail, and that's the parents of the young man who killed 4 Oxford high school students, because they couldn't track them down. They were already on the run and hiding. So if you want them in court, I think you're going to have to hang on to those people. And there are some people who are going to be a danger to themselves or others. But the rules for who you put on bond or on bail, who you put in prison with such a high bail that they can't make, they're limited rules, but they're ones I can understand and believe. But right here, it's like someone cups in front of you and the judges are automatically saying $3,000 or 30 days. And the person hasn't even had a trial yet. So that's what we're talking about on the bail thing. There are considered times where it would be a good idea to hang on to people, because bail is supposed to be assuring that they will show up in court. And those parents obviously were not intending to. But like I said, the statistics show that most people do show up in court. by far.
Okay, any other, can we end with one more question
Or answer.
or answer?
I'm learning a lot. I think Laura's probably right about the eviction thing. I know that's something that they've been working on. I didn't know that that was the one they succeeded.
I had a comment. I didn't really want the conversation to go in a different direction, but I just wondered if you could, do you know anything about these prisons being privately owned and then having these big companies come in and use prisoners to make goods without wages?
I
such as-
had a list one time of 50 companies, including Whole Foods and Costco, that were using prison labor for real cheap. Now, I don't know what the current list is, but that was 50 companies that you'd recognize their names. There's another issue for prisons, and that's the phone bills, how much it costs them to make a phone call. And that is a ripoff, and the state gets some of the money, a kickback on that. At one point, Michigan had one of these food cater type places that they actually killed their contract because the food was so awful.
Aramark, I believe.
That's the one, Aramark. And it was just, and what I heard from the Reverend Pinckney, who's Michigan's own political prisoner. How many of you know about Reverend Pinckney? Okay, basically he's in Benton Harbor, which is a Black community. And the judges knew when people were court watching because, well, they were all white people coming from some other place than Benton Harbor, obviously. So he was convicted of changing a ballot, and they had someone they had paid to witness against him. And ultimately, after he served his 30 months, and they put him in a prison in Marquette, Michigan, and Benton Harbor is in Southwest. Michigan law says you're supposed to have them in a prison as close to their own home as possible. There were some wonderful people in Michigan, in Detroit, who drove to Benton Harbor from here to here, Tara, and took her up to the Upper Peninsula to see her husband a couple times. But at the same time, she didn't drive the family car. People took her to get groceries or got groceries for her because she knew she'd be stopped by the cops. Any excuse that they can come up with. And so ultimately, the Supreme Court reversed his conviction, and the state of Michigan had to pay $1,000 a month that he was incarcerated. And in some places, it's $50,000 a year for wrongful incarceration. Now, while he was up there, one of the things he got the other prisoners, including some white supremacists who don't talk to Black people, but they listen to him to all rebel against the yucky food they had. So, and he was also teaching them math.
Excellent. Well, very good for the wealth of information you shared with us. Laura, would you like to
Okay.
sum it up for us?
Sure.
Thanks.
So in the chat, I'm going to put a link. It's what it does is it lets you find out who your senator state. This is for Michigan. I know some of you from out of town, sorry, but your state reps and senators. Some of us may not know because the districts were redrawn. We just had elections, and then it'll give you the contact information. So I would encourage everybody after this meeting to write your state representative and senator about the bail reform that's coming up February 15th. You can even act like you're in the know on the inside and say, hey, I understand that you are considering, the launch, and to ask them to deal with this issue. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to also copy from the PDF that Sherry gave us to put in the issues so far that they're dealing with. As Sherry has said, this bail bond reform bill has not been finalized.
It's a package of bills.
A package, yeah.
A package.
So,
Is there a number for that? A bill number?
No, it hasn't been brought into the legislature to go
got
through
it.
the whole process.
Got it.
And I don't know what tweaks they're going to do.
Yeah.
I want to make sure they put the tweaks in I want.
So in the meantime, it does no harm to contact your state reps right now and say, we want bail reform. And I'll tell you that issue about phone calls upon arrest, you're right. We're watching too many movies. I just assumed that. So this is a very revealing talk, Sherry.
Thank you.
I learned so much. I think others have too.
Hmm.
And I just
Well,
want to thank you so much for,
that's why I called it overlooked.
yeah,
And an
Very
overdue.
overlooked.
absolutely. Yeah, because there are a lot of larger issues. Like I think many of us are already familiar with overcrowding in prisons or the fact that they're privatized and so people are treated horribly. But some of these other issues are just astonishing. So thank you for educating us. So with that, we'll end our meeting. I just want to make a little announcement.
you spilled the water.
And encourage everybody to attend our next kitchen table talk on February 23rd. Generally, we are holding these the third or the fourth Thursdays. And I just hope everybody has a good evening. I really appreciate your participation here. And welcome also. I'm happy to see a few people from around the country here. So thank you all. And have a good night. You're also welcome to just stay and hang out and chat, but I'm going to officially end the meeting right now.
And then she'll let you know about the Gray Panthers one because she always does. And that's when the bills should be have gone in.